Well, this is just the first phase of a case that could ultimately go before a grand jury. Here to discuss what we can expect is Neama Rahmani, president of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Neama is a former federal prosecutor. Thank you so much for being here today.
Of course, Kate. Thanks for having me.
So acting U.S. Attorney Bill Asaley told reporters yesterday that Rinder Kanish could face additional charges. Tell us, what's the timeline for this kind of case?
Kate, that's absolutely right. This complaint is just to arrest him and get him back to LA. Then they're going to go before the grand jury. And at a minimum, I expect to see manslaughter charges. More than a dozen people died. But more likely, felony murder charges. And those carry the potential of a life sentence in federal prison and even the possibility of the death penalty.
You know, in court documents, prosecutors say the suspect's GPS data, his cell phone, puts him at the scene of the start of the Lockman fire on January 1st. That's because the suspect tried multiple times to call 911 and they were able to see where he was. How important is it in this case that prosecutors are able to show that it was intentional and not accidental?
Okay, there's a treasure trove of electronic evidence in this case, and it starts with Uber. The passengers reported that he was angry and agitated when he dropped them off. And the question I'm asking is, who's Uber hiring to drive its vehicles? But then there's that cell phone itself, that 911 call. And Rindernick reportedly lied to law enforcement. He said he was at the bottom of the hill when he was at the top of the hill recording firefighters fighting those flames. And then the ChatGPT images of a city burning. So there's a lot of evidence here that puts Rindernick at the scene. Now, of course, prosecutors need to tie the January 1st Lockman fire to the January 7th Palisades and Malibu fire. That's going to be the big issue in the case. But as far as Rindernick doing this intentionally, there's plenty of evidence that he lit the initial fire. He doesn't have to have intended to cause billions of dollars in damage and all those deaths as long as he intended to light that flame.
So let's dig in a little bit about that week between the fires. So investigators are saying that this fire smoldered underground until it was rekindled, reignited, and eventually became the Palisades fire. Does that mean the city of Los Angeles potentially has any culpability here? Of course, they're facing lawsuits over the fire. And what does that mean for this criminal case?
Kate, I know it's not what a lot of Malibu and Palisades homeowners want to hear, but the city has very broad immunity when it comes to these types of cases, whether it's lack of firefighters, insufficient response, lack of water in the reservoir. Those aren't really actionable claims. The government has immunity. Now, I know some lawyers are trying to argue that the state maintained a dangerous condition between January 1st and January 7th, that a duty to inspect that January 1st fire to make sure that it was out. Seems like a very, very tough case. I think it's likely a loser. And here's the problem with Rindernick being arrested and charged with arson. And even if these homeowners and renters can actually get to a jury, I expect that most of the fault will be placed on the arsonist. No, he's the criminal. He's likely going to be convicted and not the city of LA. So those strike me as bad claims. Now, the Pasadena, Altadena fire, that's different. That appears to be ignited by an Edison tower. But the Palisades case, not a good civil case against the city, unfortunately.
All right. Neama Rahmani, president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers, thank you again for being with us today.
Of course, Kate. Talk soon.